Beruchim Aba'im, welcome to another Wednesday night class in Halebanon, Avenue S, the corner of East 9th. We're learning tonight Perashat Lecha le'ilui nishmat Hasib Eman Bat Chanom Ruach Hashem Tinihena Began Eden. The class is sponsored by the Mann family. If I could just please ask before we start, no cell phones, and please leave all the comments and questions and talking till the end of the class, so we have a nice smooth ride all the way to the end of the class. The parasha starts by introducing us to Avraham Avinu. Even though his name here is Avram, and later on, towards the end of the parasha, he's called by Avraham. But in a generation of, it's actually a corrupt generation filled with thievery, lawlessness, corruption, we're met with Avraham Avinu. Hashem reveals himself to Avraham and he says, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimolatecha u'mibet abicha el ha'ares asher ar'eka. Go for yourself from your land, from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. Okay, so what's the incentive to listen to God? Ve'a'escha legoy gadol. I'll make you a great nation. Ve'abarecha, and I will bless you. Ve'agadala shemecha ve'heye beracha. I'll make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I'll bless those who bless you, and I'll curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. Which means the first patriarch, really, of all the religions, of Judaism, of Islam, and Christianity, all start from Avraham Avinu. And they all acknowledge and admit and recognize Avraham Avinu as their father. Says the Ba'al Divrei Hayim Mishans, he says like this: if ever you thought in your life and you asked yourself, you know, I'm so far gone, I have so many bad character traits, I can never come close to God, Hashem tells the person, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Now the word artzecha literally means land, but artzecha means materialistic items, gashmiyut items. So what Hashem is telling a person, says the Divrei Hayim, he says, leave all the mundane things that you think are weighing you down. You can always come back to God. And he says, what's really stopping a person from coming close to God? Molatecha. Sometimes you're born into a bad family. Sometimes you're born with relatives, as we said, relatives that are not shomer Torah or mitzvot. So you feel as you have peer pressure to act like them. No. Lech lecha me'artzecha. Leave all the bad character traits. Umimolatecha. Your birthplace. Umibet abicha. Don't blame it on anybody. Don't blame it on your father, on your mother, on your relatives. El ha'ares asher areka. And if you really want to change, I will guide you and I will show you the way. The problem is that change is very hard for some people. Either because they fall under peer pressure, or they're scared of the unknown. What I've been doing for the past 40 years, even though it might be wrong, but I know what I'm doing. I'm comfortable with it. This is what I have been doing my whole life. Now you want me to change? Yes, change is very scary because it's the fear of the unknown. There's a story told about 3 workers that they worked in the piping system or in the piping business. And their job was, the first one was to extract the old pipe. The second one was to replace the old pipe with a new pipe. And the third worker, was to cover up the hole of that whole excavation. So this has been going on for years. And one day the second worker didn't show up. Which worker, Danny, is that? The one that replaces the old pipe with the new pipe. So the 2 workers went to work as usual, and they started working on this project. The first worker changed or replaced or took out the old pipe, and the third worker covers up the hole. Whereas you're not supposed to cover up the hole because you're supposed to adapt to right now the situation in taking the place of the second worker and replacing the pipe. However, if you say to yourself, I'm stuck in my way, I don't know how to change pipes. My job in my life is to cover pipes. Guess what? Sometimes in life we're thrown into situations that we don't want. and thrown into situations that we never requested in our life, but we must adapt to the change. I'll tell you the truth. I work in a yeshiva right now. Started in September. My whole life, since my teaching career, I've dealt with adults. I've taught adults. Close to almost 20, 22 years. To teach children is no piece of cake. To teach children is very different from teaching adults. But guess what? You have to adapt to change. You have to adapt to change. You can't say, no, what will I do? I never did this before. What if I fail? Guess what? You have to try. If you fail, but you always have to try. You don't know how to replace a pipe? So right now, you're called to replace a pipe. Wear the hat of replacing a pipe. Go and learn how to replace a pipe. Go and do something about it. Don't say, I'm stuck in my way. All I know how to do is to cover up the ground. Adapt to change. And as we said, change is hard. It's difficult, especially, for example, if you live in a certain area, a certain neighborhood, now your wife doesn't like the house and she wants to move closer to the community. Okay? Change is hard. You're used to this house. Your children are used to this house. You love this area, but you have to adapt to the change. Avraham Avinu wasn't asked to leave his neighborhood. He wasn't asked to leave his house only. He was asked to leave his country. Lech Lecha me'artzecha. From his country, you are leaving Haran. It was no easy feat for Avraham Avinu by far. Avraham Avinu is asked right now to change everything around in a place where they all know him. In a sense, they respect him. He has gained followers. He converted a lot of people. He was the father of monotheism. He told people about God. He proclaimed God wherever he went. Now he's asked, Lech Lecha me'artzecha molatecha betecha. What, where? Over here, when you're changing homes, when you're moving homes, you have at least a sense of where do you want to move to. Avraham Avinu has no idea where he's going. No idea. God tells him, leave. Where am I leaving to? Just leave. It wasn't easy for Avraham Avinu. But regardless of all that, Avraham Avinu did it anyway. Says the Mishnah in Masechet Abot Perek He. Asara nisyonot nitnasa Avraham Avinu ve'amad bekulam. Avraham Avinu was tested 10 different tests. But the Mishnah doesn't enumerate what those tests are or were. It doesn't give you a list. So there's different mefarshim, different commentators that try to understand what the tests were. Many of them don't add Lech Lecha as a test. Leaving a country is not a test. You leave a country, fine. God tells you to do it, you do it. Other commentaries say no. It was probably the hardest test. The hardest test to leave his country, guess what? Even harder than the last test that he had, Lech Lecha el haaretz asher areka el haram Moriah. Leave that behind, go and sacrifice your son. This test was harder than that test. Why? Because it's the fear of the unknown. At least over there, I already have a track record of God, who God is. God tested me and I passed and he was with me my whole life. But over here is the first time he's met with God. A God that he never spoke to before. He knows who God is, and we'll see at what age he was, mahloket between the Rambam and Ra'abad, and when Avraham Avinu knew who God was. But over here is the first time Borei Olam is speaking to me, and he's telling me all of a sudden, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Not your home, not your neighborhood, your country, and leave everything behind. There's a beautiful story, a book written by Dr. Spencer Johnson. 1998, it turned to a classic bestseller. The name of the book is Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese? I'll give you the synopsis. This is taken from Wikipedia. Sniff and Scurry are two mice. And two little people, which is a human metaphor, because to the mice, you know, when you're with us, you're like us also, you're small. Hem and ho. So the two mice are Sniff and Scurry, and the two little people are hem and haw. Now, does anybody here know what hem and haw means? Indecisiveness. When I'm not sure what to do. Mice, they see a piece of cheese, they run to it. Human beings always contemplate. Is it moldy? Does it smell bad? Is it expired? So we always hem and haw on the decision. Says the synopsis, they live in a maze, a representation of one's environment. And they look for cheese, representative of happiness and success. To make the long story short for you, the mice end up finding the cheese. The two little people, hem and haw, don't end up finding the cheese. I'm sorry if I spoiled the book for you, but you should read this. You should read the book nonetheless. It's to show you that we are always in life, we're always indecisive. We don't know what to do. What Borei Olam is telling Avraham, and by the way, this book sold 23 million copies. About a story about two mice knowing what to do in life. And the people couldn't. 23 million copies. Bestseller. The message of this book is that life won't always give you what you want when you want it. Sometimes things change unexpectedly. But if we can find ways to adapt and overcome our fears, then good things will come around again for us. Avraham Avinu doesn't know what to do. Yet he knows that where I am right now, if I want to find God in my life, I can't stay over here. Everybody's worshiping idols over here. This is not my environment. How many times are we called on, probably not by God per se because we don't hear His voice, but how many times we're called on in life to change our environment? And we know it's bad for us. We know that everything around us is making us corrupt. We know. But I'm scared of the unknown. Why Perashat Lecha is so important. And the first time we're met with Avraham Avinu is the story to leave everything behind, because as Jewish people, the sons and daughters of Avraham Avinu, you are told to adapt to your new environments and to your new surroundings. Everyone here can attest to the fact that sometimes in life you were put through something you didn't want, but you made the best of it. You had to make the best of it. Otherwise, you'll dwell in your misery. You won't be able to change. We're all asked to change. The Hafez Hayim, one time in Chodesh Elul, he came to his yeshiva. His yeshiva was in Radin. And he told all the Talmidim, tomorrow I would like to speak to you about Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte from France. You know, he was this high or short, yet he almost conquered the whole world. So he tells them, I want to speak to you tomorrow about Napoleon Bonaparte. And the students, they were very amazed. I mean, Hafez Hayim knows about Napoleon Bonaparte. And FYI, was that like a wolf or something? Just FYI, goes to show you that rabbis have to be in the know of world events. Rabbis can't have their head in a bubble. Because you have to know what's going on around you. To explain things to people that don't know. To answer questions when people come and ask you questions. Like, what do we do? In fact, somebody today sent me a message. He said, Rabbi, in this time, you're probably going to have a lot of people coming to you, trying to find, make some light or give them some insights or help them out in this whole Gaza war. What's going on? Now, if I had my head in a bubble and in a book the whole day, I would say to the person, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. What, there's a war in Gaza? Really? What's going on? October 7? What happened on October 7? That was Simchat Torah. What happened on Simchat Torah? No. You can't just be oblivious to the world around you. As not only a rabbi, as a human being, you must know what's going on to help others. You have to be in the times. You have to know the times, what's going on. So the Hafez Hayim tells them, come tomorrow to the yeshiva. I'll speak to you about Napoleon Bonaparte. The students, like I said, were amazed. The next day they came. And he told them like this. I'll read you in Hebrew. De'u lachem. Shh. He says, De'u lachem. Napoleon asa pa'am seder l'chayalim shelo ve'amar lahem. Napoleon one time gathered all his soldiers and he told them, Mi shelo sho'ef liyot general be'atid, lo yachol liyot hayal batzava sheli. If you don't have an aspiration to become a general one day, I don't want you as my soldier. You always have to strive and aspire to great heights. If you always think you're going to be a soldier your whole life, I don't want you as my soldier. So the Hafetz Chaim tells them like this: Mi shelo rotzeh ושואף להיות גדול בתורה, לא יכול להיות תלמיד בישיבה שלי. If you're coming over here for as many years as you're learning in yeshiva, and you're only coming here to learn and nothing other than that, and you don't want to strive to become something big in your life, I will not accept you as my talmid. As human beings, we must always adapt to change. You cannot be complacent and comfortable in what you are. Now, I'm sure all of you here probably changed somewhat from October 7th to do something to help the hayalim, to help the kidnapped, to help the soldiers, to help the situation at Israel. But unfortunately, we should not wait for tragic news to change. As Yehudim, we must always want to change. Always take something upon yourself. You don't stay in diapers your whole life. They don't baby feed you your whole life. You must grow with the times. You must learn how to put on clothes, eat regular food, become a human being. You're not a baby anymore. That's what Borei Olam is telling Avraham Avinu. Lech lecha me artzecha. Forget about the past. Forget about your hometown. Forget about your father and your mother. If people are weighing you down, in fact, there is a halacha. If a father does not want his child to learn Torah in yeshiva, a child does not have to listen to his father. Whereas he must listen to his father in every single aspect of kibud av va'em, of honoring parents. But if the father does not want his child to learn Torah, you do not listen to your father. Now, I'm not telling you over here how to raise your children. I'm just putting it in perspective. As Yehudim, we must always grow. Well, obviously, if you had a choice between going to Eretz Israel, which the parents, they're so right to do so, scared, or to learn, for example, in Baltimore Yeshiva, or in Lakewood Yeshiva, or in Rabbi Diamond's Kollel, obviously, go learn local if your parents are scared. But I'm saying all those reasons excluded. If the father says no learning Torah, you don't listen to your parents. Because as human beings, you must always want to change. You cannot stay in the same spot that you are your whole life. Rav Kook alav shalom, he wrote in his sefer, Orot HaKodesh, and I'll translate it. He says, Ben Adam. Ben Adam, we know that means human being. Ale lema'ala ale. Go up, go up. Ki kawah az lecha, because you have great strength, you have great power. Yesh lecha kanfe ruach. You have wings of the wind. Kanfe nesharim abirim. You have the wings of an eagle, the mighty eagle. Al techahesh bam pen yechahashu lecha. Don't deny them because they might deny you. Or don't be oblivious to the great strength that you have invested inside of you. Inside of every single Yehudi, Borei Olam gives us great strength. Don't overlook those strengths because they might overlook you. Derosh otam, seek them, call out for them, v'yimatz'u lecha miyad, and they will help you right away. Rav Nachman of Breslov brings in his Sipurei Ma'asiyot, along with so many beautiful, fascinating stories. He said that one time the eagle lost his way, a baby eagle lost his way, and he started mingling with the pigeons. And he was eating with the pigeons. And he was acting like the pigeons. And they were eating breadcrumbs and he was eating breadcrumbs. And they fly, but they can never fly as high as an eagle. You know the saying, soar like an eagle? You really soar. He's the bird that flies the highest. But they can't fly like an eagle. And he's flying like them. Let's say the altitude is, 1,000, 2,000 feet. He's flying like them. Until one day another eagle sees him. He says, what are you doing? So what do you mean what I'm doing? These are my friends. I grew up with them. I'm eating with them. I hang out with them. He says, do you know who you are? You are an eagle. He says, what does that mean exactly? What does that mean I'm an eagle? He says, fly, could fly higher than them. He says, I can't, I tried. I could only reach their altitude. He says, try, you are an eagle. Don't be discouraged by what's around you. You're an eagle, you could fly, you could soar to great heights, and sure enough, he did that. Or what's the other story about a person that bought a train ticket? This is a famous story. He bought a train ticket. He wanted to go from one town to another town, and he doesn't know what the train ticket says on it. So he goes all the way to the back, to the last car, and he sits over there with all the peasants, and they're drinking, they're having a good time, until the person, the ticket master, is that what they call him? Or that's the box office for Broadway plays. Under the ticket taker, that's what it's called, ticket taker. Okay, I guess we'll use that. The ticket taker sees him. He says, can I have your ticket, please? He gives him the ticket. He says, what are you doing here? What do you mean what I'm doing here? I bought a ticket just like everybody else. He says, you belong in first class. He says, I don't know how to read. He says, that's your problem. You don't belong here with the peasants. You belong in first class. If we are for a second to think that we are just like everybody else in the world, and we're like the peasants of the world, we're very mistaken. We belong in first class. As Yehudim, you must always aspire to reach great heights, to soar to new levels you never thought that you can, because you have great power invested in you. So what do we have to do? So what do we have to do to reach those levels? My inspiration, I open up the Torah. I see what happened with Avraham Avinu and Yitzhak and Yaakov, all the hardships they went through in their life and what made them our patriarchs. And our matriarchs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they were barren for so many years, yet they called out to Hashem and they changed their life around. Tonight is the yahrzeit of Rachel Imenu, Yod Aleph Heshvan. Rachel was not comfortable not having any kids. She could have said, I don't have any kids. Fine, Yaakov has with Leah, with Bilhah, and with Zilpah, so I don't have kids. That's my lot in life. Let it be. No. She wasn't comfortable with that. She wanted a change in her life. And guess what? We're only around b'zchut Rachel Imenu. And we will only be redeemed b'zchut Rachel Imenu. I'm not talking about the cloud that they supposedly saw in the air. No. We'll only be redeemed. You saw that lunacy? That clouds, all of a sudden it's Rachel Imenu. All of a sudden, Rachel Imenu. Fine. Okay. Ashrahem Yisrael. Fine. Rachel Imenu is the one that's going to save us from the Galut. She's going to tell God, I don't want my kids to be in the Galut anymore. Why are they in exile, God? You promised me that the reason why I'm buried over here by Kever Rachel and not Ma'at HaMachpelah is because one day when the children will pass Kever Rachel and they'll scream out, Mama Rachel, Rachel Imenu, save us, and I will be there for them. So where's the change, God? I changed. I wasn't jealous of my sister, and I wasn't complacent and comfortable with my lot in life, and I beseeched you, and I ended up getting 2 kids. Whereas you gave everybody more kids than me, but I'll take 2 kids only. And I changed. God, can't you change? And guess what? Says the Midrash, Hashem doesn't listen to nobody other than Rachel Imenu, because she wasn't comfortable with her life. We should not be comfortable with the life that we are living in. There is a better life than the life that we have right now. I'm not talking about Mashiach. I'm not talking about Olam Haba or the Beit HaMikdash. The life that you are living right now, if you can change it. If you have a new opportunity to change your life, go ahead for it. Go do it. You'll fail, so you'll fail. So you never say to yourself, I wonder what would have been if I took that shot. I wonder what would have been if I took that job. If I listened to that person. If I took his advice. Go do it. Put down the cell phones. There's nothing in it that's good for you. You're only looking at other people's life, how they changed their life. I'll never be able to do mine. Put it down. You want to change your life, you can do it. There's a quote. Albeit it's from a movie, but I'll tell it to you nonetheless. I won't tell you what movie it's from. I don't want to get in trouble. Says the quote, you can't get so hung up on where you'd rather be that you forget to make the most of where you are. I wish I did that. I wish I did that. Stop wishing. Do it. Stop wishing. Oh, I should have did that. Fine. Right now, what are you doing right now? Do you like your life right now? You want to be inspired? You want to change? Go change. Go be inspired. Do something about it. You're always dwelling on the past of what I was and what I could be. Avraham Avinu, if Avraham Avinu would have said, no, God, I'm sorry, I know, I love you and everything, you're great, you're the omnipresent, you're the omnipotent God, but, I have friends over here. My friends, I'm comfortable. They know me. I hang out with them. I go to bars with them. I go to kosher bars, right? I go eat dinner with them. Hey, what will they say about me? That's your problem. Stop worrying about what people will say about you. If I could credit my wife for anything, well, I could credit her for everything. The reason why I'm here is because of her. But if I could credit her with one quote, she doesn't really like me, mentioning her name. But if I could credit her with one thing, she always tells me, stop worrying about what people will say. Stop worrying about what people will say. Stop worrying. And she reminds me that on a daily. Stop worrying about what people will say. If it's the right thing, go for it. There's another quote. Because I don't remember it, I'm going to have to get it for you. Yes, I know I'm not supposed to use my phone, but here it is. This quote is from Lou Holtz. I have no idea who that is, but it's, you know who it is? Okay, fine. You know who it is? Fine, you know who it is. I have no idea what it is. He says like this: nothing on this earth is standing still. It's either growing or it's dying. No matter if it's a tree or a human being. You understand what he's saying right now? He's saying right now, you're either growing or you're dying. You cannot stay in the same spot you are your whole life. You have to adapt to change. Change is scary. Change is hard. Change is difficult. It's cumbersome. But you must adapt to change if you want to grow in life. The Rambam and the Ra'abad. The mahloket is, how old was Avraham Avinu when he recognized there is a God in the world? According to the Rambam, he was 40 years old. According to the Ra'abad, he was 3 years old. So let me understand this correctly. Let's go with the Ra'abad's opinion. If he knows God and he recognizes because he saw the sun sets, he saw the sunsets, he saw the moon, then he saw the moon, then he saw the sun. He said, who is it? There must be something or someone, Ba'al Habira, he's controlling all this. So he recognized God at age 3. So from age 3 to age 75, where God reveals himself the first time to Avraham, age 75. Even the Midrash that says that Avraham threw himself into the furnace, God didn't reveal himself to Avraham. The first time he spoke to Avraham was over here. Yomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. So for 72 years, Avraham Avinu was doing what? Avraham Avinu was dwelling in his environment, was comfortable in his surrounding. Now you tell a person that 72 years he's been with the same exact people. And mind you, back then they had a long life. Avraham Avinu alone, 175. You see later, people had a long life. Tell a person, 72 years in the making, leave everything behind. That was not an easy decision for Avraham Avinu. But he did it anyway. Why? Because if God is telling me to do it, I will do it. Now you're all asking the same question. God doesn't speak to me. God doesn't tell me to change my ways. Why should I change my ways? Because Hashem reveals himself in the Torah. When the Torah says a halakha, you follow the halakha. That's God talking to you. That's adapting to change. We'll take an easy example. A lady that doesn't wear a head covering. It's very hard for her. She must adapt to change. God didn't speak to me, tell me to wear a head covering. Yes, but the Torah tells you to wear a head covering. So you wear a head covering. Easy examples. Tzitzit, for men. God didn't speak to me, tell me to wear tzitzit. You're right, but the Torah tells you, you must wear tzitzit. As a Jew, you must adapt to change. It's very difficult. I understand it's difficult. Don't think it was easy for me also, and I know it's not easy for you. We're not all born as religious people. We change in life. You can't stay the same way you are your whole life. 72 years he's changing. even more. Towards the middle of the Perashat, Hashem reveals himself to Avraham Avinu yet another time. And he tells him, Avraham, you will have children. Don't worry, the Jewish people will start from you. So Avraham Avinu says, are you speaking to the right guy? The Gemara says Avraham Avinu, pardon me for saying this, didn't have any genitals. Didn't have any reproductive organs, nothing. You know what that means? Gemara Masechet Yebamot, Sarah and Avraham, Ailonim hayu, which means there was nothing there. Do you know what that means? Not that Sarah didn't have a womb only. There was nothing there for her to have any children. She couldn't have any children. Yet Borei Olam makes the impossible possible. I know you're all asking, what are you talking about? How could Borei Olam all of a sudden create something new? That's our problem. Because if you're willing to change, Borei Olam will change the whole world for you. So Borei Olam tells Avraham Avinu, you will have children. He says, I saw in the astrologers, I saw in the astronomy, I saw in the horoscope, in the zodiac, I opened up the New York Times, and it said that my mazal, I cannot have any children. So says the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, Daf, I didn't write it down. Borei Olam takes Avraham Avinu above the stars. And he says, you're right. If you're living with this world, with the laws of nature, you're right, you'll never have children. But as a Jew, and as the first Jew in Jewish history, Avraham Avinu, you are to be an example of your children. The Jewish people don't live with the laws of nature. The Jewish people always defy the laws of nature. Do I have to give you a bigger proof? We are still around. I wish I had the Mark Twain essay. They're all gone. They're all gone. All the empires are gone. Only the Jewish people are everlasting. How does that make any sense? I understand if we're a few billion. We're not. We're a few million. That's all we are. And we defy the laws of nature because we have God by our side, because we are willing to change with the times. And if we change with the times, Borei Olam changes the course of nature for us. Rashi says, Va'abarecha, va'agedala shemecha, veheye beracha. In English, what did we say that is? Va'abarecha means, and I will bless you, make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Rashi says, Va'abarecha ze she'omrim Elohei Yitzhak. Va'agedala shemecha ze she'omrim Elohei Yaakov. Veheye beracha ze she'omrim Elohei Abraham. Is that the correct Rashi? Let me make sure I have the correct Rashi. Yes. Yes. Ve'ascha legoy gadol, I will make you a great nation. Ze she'omrim Elohei Abraham. What in the world is Rashi talking about? So, as you all know, and I am certain that all of you over here pray the Amidah at least one time a day, you say in the Amidah, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Abotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov. You mention that God is the God of all our patriarchs, and then you conclude that blessing by saying, Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avraham. Rashi says, where's Yitzhak? Where's Yaakov? You started off the beracha by mentioning Yitzhak and Yaakov, but you concluded the beracha with no mention of Yitzhak and Yaakov. You only say, Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avraham. So Rashi says, why will they not finish the beracha with Yitzhak and Yaakov, only Avraham? Rashi says, Becha yiyu hotmin. I only want them to conclude the beracha only with your name. But Rashi doesn't tell us why. But I saw a beautiful Megaleh Amukot. Says the Megaleh Amukot, what does that mean? They will conclude with you. Conclude what? Only the Amidah? Only the terminology and the words of the Amidah they will conclude? No. Says the Megaleh Amukot, Becha yiyu hotmin, they will conclude. He says, Dor ekbeta dimshiha yiyu hotmin be'Avraham. In the end of days, that's what it means. In the end of days, we will conclude this exile with the merit of Avraham Avinu. You hear this, Danny? The merit of Yitzhak is beautiful. The merit of Yaakov is beautiful. But we will only be able to exit this galut, this exile we are in, only in the merit of Avraham. And the question is, what was the merit of Avraham? Well, we've been seeing up until now that the merit of Avraham, if any merit that he had, was that he had full bitachon in Borei Olam, full confidence in God, full reliance on God, full support in God. Whatever Hashem wants, this is what I will do. Says the Megaleh Amukot, in the end of days, we will all be asked to face the same dilemma as Avraham Avinu. God says, rely on me. How could I rely on you? 1,400 Jews were murdered in one day. Rockets flying above Israel every single day. The hostages are still not back. So we say to God, how do you want us to rely on you? How do you want us to have bitachon? Avraham Avinu had bitachon. And that's what I want from you. I want you to work on your midat bitachon. Says the Sfat Emet. Avraham Avinu paved the way for the Jewish people in the desert. The Jewish people in the desert were walking for 40 years after clouds. You know what that means, walking after clouds? Where am I going? Moshe, where are we going? Today, if you take a tour, or if you forget about the tour, if you ride with your kids in the car, and you have the clear map, for example, in my car, you connected to CarPlay. I'm sure everybody's car over here is not 1969. You have CarPlay. And the screen tells you, if you put Waze or Google Maps or whatever you use, or Apple, I think Apple has their own thing, it tells you when you will arrive at your destination. It will tell you, guaranteed. And not only does it tell you on the screen, it tells you where to turn. Yet your kids always ask you, are we almost there? How much further? How long does it take? The screen is right there, Shema Yisrael. Look at the screen. Stop bothering me. This is an hour ride. We're talking about the Jews walking in the desert after clouds of glory for 40 years. Says the Pasuk, Lechtech aharai bamidbar be'eretz lo zeru'ah. The desert's not planted. What are they walking after? Clouds of glory. And where? You talk about a land flowing with milk and honey? When will we get to that land? 40 years. Imagine telling your children, we'll go. In 40 years we'll go. It says in the Pasuk, Vegam tzeda lo asu lahem. They didn't have any provisions. They didn't have any food. They didn't take anything out with them from Mitzrayim. What they take? They took some dough which barely got cooked or baked by the sun, and they made matzah out of it. And then what? Now we have no food left. What are we eating? Slaughtering the sheep? We got a Torah that tells us you have to know how to slaughter the sheep. You have to salt it. You have to kosher it. Now what do? We walk after God. Avraham Avinu says the Sfat Emet, he paved the road for his children to walk after God. But Avraham Avinu didn't have it so easy. You know why? Because finally when he got to the land, supposedly flowing with milk and honey, what does it say in the Pasuk? Vahira abba aretz. There's a famine. There's a hunger in the land of Israel. God, is this a joke or something? Is this candid camera? What's going on over here? You tell me to follow you, and I have full faith in you, and I rely on you. I get to the land where you want me to get to, and all of a sudden there's a famine, there's a hunger. What's going on over here? Yet Avraham Avinu doesn't ask any questions on God. Imagine this. Ask yourself a question. Anytime we're faced with any obstacles in our life, our first question is, why are you doing this to me, God? That's our first question. I know I say it so many times in classes, but that's our first question on God. Over here, Vahira Abba Aretz. No questions on God. Says the Derech HaMelech. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, He'emanti ki adaber, ani aniti me'od. The literal translation of this pasuk, it's located in Psalms Kof Tet Zayin, which is 116, pardon me, Yod. David HaMelech says, He'emanti ki adaber. I believe in you, God. I always speak your name. Ani aniti me'od. Aniti, he says over here, Gam im yesh li yisurin haz v'shalom, gam ken he'emanti b'Hashem. Aniti comes from the word inui. Enui means suffering. La'anot. Even when God, you suffer, make me suffer, even when you send me obstacles, even when there's a ra'ab ba'aretz, where there's a famine, he'emanti ke'adabir. I still believe in you, God. That's what we are called on every single day. Even when there are obstacles in our life, we must have full reliance on Borei Olam. Says Aaron Edut. If you notice, I mentioned before that what do we say in the Beracha? Baruch Ata Hashem, Magen Avraham. Says Aaron Edut, Magen is numerical value 93. It consists of 3 times the word El. El means God. El is 31. 31 times 3 is 93. Beautiful. He says, what does that mean? He says, it's a very deep piece over here, but I'll tell you what I understood from him. He says, there are 3 kilipot in the world. Kilipot literally means the dark side, the evil side. He says, and all 3 of them disguise themselves as if they're God, but they're the evil force. Which means sometimes, and we explained this in the past, sometimes you think you're doing the right thing, but it's really total opposite. He says, what are they? El Aher, El Zar, El Nechar. In the Torah proper, when it's talking about a foreign god, or idolatry, or idols, it says either El Aher, another god, El Zar, a foreign god, and El Nechar, not Jewish God, which means not God. 3 kilipot, 3 times El, 31 times 3 is 93. Avraham Avinu understood that if I stay in the place that I am right now, I will drown in the tum'ah that there. Yes, I might be doing a good thing. Kiruv rehokim. I might be bringing people back to God, but it won't last. Do you know why? Because there's so much tum'ah in the world that's making me drown more than it's making me uplift myself to God. So I'm willing to adapt. Because if God's telling me to adapt and change, I'm willing to do that. He says, Magen, 3 times El. But there's more. We say in Tehillim, Asabehem kesef ve'zahab ma'aseh yedei adam. In English, their idols, we're talking about the people that worship idols, their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. It's very hard for a Gentile to rely on God. Says David HaMelech, you know why? Because they believe in the fashion work of their hands, in that I was able to accomplish, in that I was able to work, in that I was able to sell, in that I was able to create, in that I was able to do. It's no wonder that all the professors and scientists, the top ones, are atheists. It's no wonder. Because the more technology or the more wisdom that you have, you attribute it to your own knowledge and to your own success. Asabehem kesef ve'zahab ma'aseh yedei adam. But David HaMelech concludes that mizmor of Tehillim and he says, Yisrael betach ba'Hashem izram umaginam hu. But the Jewish people are different than the Gentiles. They rely solely on God. You know why? Izram umaginam. What does the word maginam mean? Magen. God is our shield. God is our fortress. Now we understand why we say Baruch Ata Hashem Magen Avraham. Because God was always there for Avraham Avinu. He was there for Avraham Avinu at all times. He is there for you at all times if you trust in Him. There's a pasuk in Mishleh. And by the way, Avraham Avinu wins the war in this week's Perashat. Wins the war, 4 kings against 5 kings. Why did he go to the war in the first place? To save his nephew Lot. He finishes the Melchama. Melech Sodom comes to him. He says, wow, all this money that you got, all the loot, everything you got, all the provisions from the war, Ten li hanefesh ve'arechush kahlach. You have a lot of money, okay? And you also, you saved a lot of people from the war. All these people that I know that you want to go now and convert them to become Jews. Let's make a deal. Let's make a bargain over here. Ten li hanefesh I don't want any business to do with this Judaism in the world. Give me the people, v'arechush kahlach, and take the money. I'd rather have the people because I don't want them to follow in your ways, Abraham. So what does Abraham Avinu say? He says, take the money. I don't want the money. He says, Harimot yadi el Hashem el elyon im mehud ve'at seroch na'al. He says, you think I care about the money? If I have money, I will stop relying on God. Because the nature of the things is in life, the more money you have, the more hazve shalom you start forgetting about God, that He's the one who gave you the money. He says, I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. I'd rather convert people to believe in the one God than the money that you're offering me to keep. Says Mishle. Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishle, Perek Chav Bet, Pasuk Aleph. He says, Nibhar Shem Me'osh Rab, Mikesef, I already hear my voice starting out. Nibhar Shem Me'osh Rab, Mikesef Vezahav Hen Tob. In English, a good name is preferable to great wealth. Grace is better than silver and gold. If you have a good name, as we say, Tob Shem Mishemen Tob. A good name is finer, is more valuable, is more expensive than fine oil. But he says like this, Mikesef v'zahab hen tob. Grace is better than silver and and gold. Grace, I'll repeat it. Grace is better than silver and gold. What grace is he talking about? Finding grace in people's eyes? Shlomo HaMelech is talking about finding grace in God's eyes. You know, we say in Havdalah every Mosai Shabbat, Umsahen v'sechel tob be'ene Elohim ve'adam. You must first find grace in God's eyes. And how do you find grace in God's eyes? When you rely on God. When you make God your sole being to rely on. But says the Sefer Hayim V'Shalom something magnificent. He says, Hen Tob. Hen Tov means grace. Take those two words, Hen Tov. What word does it make? Bitachon. Hen Tov makes the word Bitachon. Those letters are in the word Bitachon. You know how to find grace in God's eyes? If you have Bitachon in Borei Olam. If you find grace in God's eyes when you rely only on Borei Olam, just like Avraham Avinu did. Says the Hidushei Harim. V'Noach matza hen be'einei Hashem. And Noah found grace in God's eyes. Did Noah rely solely on God? Yes. Borei Olam told Noah, build a teva, go in the teva. Okay, we have the difference between Noah and Avraham. We're not comparing right now, it's not that class. But he also relied on God. Says the Hidushei Harim. There's another grace. Hen isha al ba'la. You know, we throw the term Eshet Hayil around very loosely. Eshet Hayil, Eshet Hayil. Wow, your wife, such an Eshet Hayil. See this lady, such an Eshet Hayil. Who said? Who said she's an Eshet Hayil? How do you define Eshet Hayil? Says the Hidushei Harim. One thing describes or defines an Eshet Hayil. You want to all be, I was going to point over here. You want to be all Eshet Hayil? האישה אין לה מקום אחר והיא מתבטלת אליו לבעלה. A good wife is that she does whatever her husband tells her to do. That's an Eshet Hayil. Eshet Hayil is not because she joins all these bake sales, or she reads Tehillim, or she bakes challah, or she joins Chinese auctions. That's not an Eshet Hayil. She could be a good person. It's not an Eshet Hayil. An Eshet Hayil is a lady that follows what her husband says. Why? He says because she has nobody else to rely on in her life other than her husband. Says the Hidushei Harim. Mine? That's not mine. It's fine. That's not my recording. I'm sorry, but it's not my recording. Just like a lady relies only on her husband, and it says, Hen isha al ba'la, hen, the grace of a lady on her husband because she listens to him. Same thing over here. Umsahen v'sechel tov be'anei Elohim ve'adam. A lady makes her husband her number one. You are to make your husband the number one. Who's your husband? Borei Olam is your husband. We are married to God. You make God your number. How do I make God my number one? By relying only on Borei Olam. It's very difficult. It is a challenge, I understand. But we are to rely solely on Borei Olam. This is what it means. Becha yiyu hotmin. They will conclude the exile with you, Avraham, with your character trait, with your midah, with your good deeds. What good deeds does Avraham Avinu have? Midat bitachon, walking with God. Whatever Hashem tells me to do, I will do. Says the Yerushalmi. Why was the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed? This is the Yerushalmi Masechet Yoma. Why was the first Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Because they had Abdei Kochabim, they had Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, Shefichut Damin. The three cardinal sins. Basheni, the second Beit HaMikdash, why was it destroyed? You're all going to tell me because of Sinat Hinam. That's not the reason I'm bringing you tonight. I know what you're going to tell me. Says the Yerushalmi, Biglal shehayu ohavim et hamamon, because they loved money. Vekasha hi sinat hinam shehi shekula keneged avodah zara gilui arayot v'shfichut damim. He mentions sinat hinam, but what does it mean? Ohavim et hamamon. They loved money. I can't love money. How will I survive without money? How do I pay for anything in life without money? So Baruch Hashem, we have the Gaon of Vilna. The Gaon of Vilna explains to us what that means, love of money. Says the Gaon of Vilna over here, to bring everything in a few sentences, he says, Mehoser haftaha shekol hakin'a v'sin'a mimenu. And he continues, and I'll explain it. And he continues and he says, where's the line? Oh, here. Libam hayatov me'od. This is the first one. Shema'alat bitachon al kulam. Ve'aharonim asku b'torah. B'gemilut hasadim. U'mepene maharba. Mepene hoser habitachon. When a person loves money, it's very hard for them to depart from their money. Why is it very hard for them to depart from their money? Because asabehem kesef v'zahab ma'aseh yedei adam. Because they really foolishly believe that they are the ones who made that money. You know why the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed? And you know why we are still in the exile right now, 1950 something years afterwards? Is because we have a lack of trust in God, that everything we have in our life belongs to Him and not to us. The first Beit HaMikdash, they didn't have that. They had other problems, but they didn't have that problem. That's why between the first one and the second one, only a lapse of 70 years. But between the second one and until today, we have something called, says the Gaon of Vilna, Hoser Bitachon. We don't rely on God enough that everything belongs to Him. What Avraham Avinu? He left everything behind. True, he became very wealthy in Mitzrayim. True, he became very wealthy afterwards in Gerar. But he left everything behind, not knowing where he was going. Yet he relied on Borei Olam with Midat Bitachon, that Borei Olam will take care of me. I don't have money right now, but Borei Olam will take care of me and I will have money soon. Continues the Me'or Einayim and he says like this. He says, Midat Bitachon goes hand in hand with Midat Hesed. You know, we mentioned earlier that in the final exile, we have to emulate Avraham. And we've been talking 55 minutes about the character trait of Avraham, about Bitachon. But we know Avraham Avinu excelled in something else. Hesed. Hesed le Avraham. We say it every Minha Shabbat, Chesed le'Avraham. Every morning we say it? Oh, in the Korbanot. Yeah, I'm saying, some people over here, maybe they don't say Korbanot, so maybe they won't know what I'm talking about. But Minha Shabbat, I believe everybody prays Minha Shabbat. Chesed and Bitachon go hand in hand. Says the Me'or Einayim, why? Because if you truly believe that everything that you have in life is because Hashem deemed you to have it, and you rely on Borei Olam, the money that I have right now, when I'm called to do chesed with others, and to sometimes depart and relinquish my money, if I'm a person that doesn't believe in God, not in the aspect that I don't believe in God, I'm a denier of God, but in the aspect that I don't believe that everything comes from Hashem, it's very hard for me to do chesed. It's very hard for me to do tzedakah. Why? Asabehem kesef v'zahab. I'm the one who made the money. So you're asking me not to depart from my money? Says the Me'or Einayim, chesed and bitachon is the same thing. Avraham Avinu excelled in both of them, they're really one. If you have bitachon in Hashem, when they knock on your door, when they call you on those phones, on the phone line to give them money to tzedakah to organizations, gladly I will give it to you. Because if I have it, that means Hashem gave it to me to help others with it. Oh, what about losing money? You can't lose when doing God's will. You cannot lose by walking in the ways of God. Did Avraham Avinu lose anything? Well, not only didn't he lose, but he gained so much more. In his hometown, he couldn't have any children. He moved to Eretz Israel, okay, after 13 years or so, or 24 years, pardon me. Yeah, 24 years, but he had children. He didn't have any money in Haran. He left Haran, he had a lot of money. The wealthiest person. In fact, not only that, says the Midrash, as he's going to Eretz Israel, he had to stay by hotels, right? It's a journey from Haran to Eretz Israel. It's a few days, probably months, I don't even know. He stayed in hotels, and the hotel, the innkeeper, told him, pay up. He says, look, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I don't have any money. But I'm good. My word is good. They all trusted Avraham. Avraham Avinu's name was permeated, spread out to the whole land. And you know what he did with his money on the way back to Haran? He gave back the money back to every single hotel that he stayed by. Because it's not my money. It's Borei Olam's money. If Borei Olam gives it to me, I invest it in tzedakah, in chesed, in gemilut hasadim. If you really believe in Borei Olam like Avraham Avinu, you will lech lecha me'artzecha. You will keep growing. You will keep striving, keep aspiring, keep on going. It's hard. It will be difficult. It will be a journey. But if Borei Olam tells you to do it, you follow in the ways of Borei Olam. We'll just conclude with one thing. As I mentioned, tonight is the Haskara, or the yahrzeit, as they say, of Rachel Immenu. And Rachel Immenu tells Borei Olam, she's really talking to Yaakov, but it's really addressing also Borei Olam. ותאמר רחל אל יעקב, הבה לי בנים ואם אין מתה אנוכי. Give me children. If you don't give me children, I might as well be dead. For a lack of better words. Give me children. What value does my life have if I don't have any children? This is what she told Yaakov. But she's really telling Borei Olam, and she's telling Borei Olam up until today. Borei Olam, return my children to me. Rachel Immenu tells Borei Olam, especially in the darkest hours of Am Yisrael right now, which we are facing. Borei Olam, return my children. How can I go on without my children? Guess what? You have to emulate Rachel and say this to Borei Olam every single day. Say a little prayer. Add these words. Hashem, give us back our children. Give us back our elders. Give us back our youth. Give us back our babies. How could Am Yisrael go on like this? This is something unheard of. Something that never happened in the history of Am Yisrael. Make no mistake about it. This never happened in the history of Am Yisrael. the gruesome things we are seeing, the horrific images we are seeing, the atrocities and everything that's going on. This is not normal. But like I said in the beginning of the class, there's a better life waiting for us. Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Why are we complacent as Yehudim? But you have to scream out, God, I don't like this life. There has to be a better option. Whatever the option is, whether it's Mashiach or the Beit HaMikdash or whatever it is. But all I know is this has to stop. Speak to Borei Olam. Talk to Hashem. Add a few, especially the ladies, your tefillah goes a very long way. Guess what? Men, their tefillah is stronger than the men. Add a few words. Borei Olam, Yomah letzarotenu dai. Borei Olam, say, please, enough is enough. We've dealt with a lot of things. Please, Borei Olam, stop everything that's going on. Send us Mashiach Tzidkenu. Rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. We should only hear Besorot Tovot, Yershuot and Nehamot. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.